testing 47421. Coming to you from outer space. Well, there is space between us. Maybe a lot between my head. I know some people would say. Empty space, they usually say. But given the way the world is, I think it's almost a compliment. So this is going to be part 3, and I've got to advertise it around all these different social media sites too. And I'll come back to you. And if you're still hanging in there, we listened to tape 250 and realized we didn't talk about the beginning of it. So anyway, we got a lot to say. No, I don't want Facebook first. Okay, Russell's saying it's all coming out. Declassified the Kennedy things, I guess. It's all redacted. Half the page is in black ink.
Don't get distracted.
Right. Oh, yes. Okay. Looks like we are live. I can confirm it on YouTube. How come I don't got a picture? No picture. Okay, let me see if I can do this again. No title. Oh, well, it does have the title. It's the same as the last 2 titles. So I guess it's fine. But, there it is. Okay, so YouTube's done. Now good old X. I don't know what, this doesn't look right. Part 3. Alright, I guess it's alright. I don't know why it's, I see, they give me the description in there too. Alright, never mind. Looks like it's working. Good evening, Old School Dave. And the Finch Show, greetings, Sawyer, Kathy, and all. Old School Dave said, hello, my wonderful YouTube friends. Really, we do have a bit of a community here, I guess. I mean, I know we do because there's a lot of commonality going on and interests. Okay, so let's see, I'll put this on live chat, and then I'll pop it out. I think then I've done what I want to do, except for continue the stream. So Kathy and I listened to that same audio tape, number 250, again, and we realized that we hardly said anything about the earlier part of the tape because we went right to the way that Doe talked about tea, and talking about the trance that happened one time, that T went into a trance, 73, and a lot of things about, and Brother Francis. Anyway, so I'm just going to start with, that centeredness was a big part, and the biggest cause of unhappiness is self-centeredness. Now, this is, I kept on getting the thought of individuals listening to these tapes and dealing with the thoughts of how this seems to be exactly that kind of brainwashing that Marshall Applewhite had over their students. Now that's a very elementary kind of childish even interpretation, because they don't know, because a number of reasons, I guess, in their own makeup, they're not prepared to think about outside the box that much, about, what we're told if we grow up in society and we don't have anybody thirsty to learn more about things and to seek things out, seek information out, so, if somebody, anyway, so self-centeredness, the way Jesus taught it was that the greatest commandment was to love your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And so, and then the second greatest commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. And that love was always not an erotic love, and it wasn't a love like between spouses, but it was actually in terms of, there was no sensuality in the love at all that Jesus was referring to, and except for the sensuality of the familial connection, which does have a big sensuality feeling, because especially when somebody has a child and they are attached together biologically, and they've also got some of the same mind. And so they have some deal with some of the same things, though they can, surface in different ways and even not be be generationally different. I think between additional children that somebody may have. I've only had one child in this vehicle's life, and Kathy has one child. Both are out of the house, so to speak. But anyway, I don't know why I got into that, but uh, so I already covered in the two previous parts to this how in this tape, that 250, that really shows again and again and again and again that this is an astronaut training program. This isn't the same kind of. This isn't like joining a belief system and then becoming uh, to where the preacher says something and everybody says it back and they tell you to say a prayer, and so they all say the Our Father or whatever prayer it is in whatever religion they have, and that's got its place in the human kingdom, of course, because the next level has provided all that. Uh, but but the classroom was bringing it totally to reality uh, in a way that we could still understand while recognizing that the history in the records was talking about the same evolutionary level above human as the kingdom of God, the kingdom in that literal heavens, the kingdom of heaven, where the creators abide, or creator, if we want to just talk about the chief of chiefs, the way that Tiendo did, somebody that we're not going to begin to understand where that individual came from until we become a member of the next level. Anyway, so I forgot where I was going, so I'm just going to go back to the chat and see if anyone's going to rescue me. Rise Above's here. Hello. And no one's rescuing me, so I'll have to move on to the next. I'll read the rest of this, the topics that were in the previous ones, and so if you're interested in them, you can go back to the previous parts to this title. Tiendo awakening when driving while asleep, like in the movie Out on a Limb with Shirley MacLaine. And Doe experienced that for 45 minutes at a stretch, was it? And that T went into a trance the one time when she asked him to come to her house, and when he got there, he said she wanted to meditate, and Doe said, okay, even though he didn't think of meditation in any kind of a spiritual way. To him, it was prayer, could be meditation, and he said, and also, like going over his day, what he planned for the day, and time to think about those things, and then Doe at Gold Beach, Oregon in '73 saying to T, no more Brother Francis. Because Brother Francis was, if you haven't been here before, a being that T sensed was with her, but she can only see from like at a peripheral vision on the same side of her whenever that happened, and it looked like a shape of some sort, with potentially a robe and the movement, and the shape was maybe from the waist down.
From the
So,
waist to the knee.
like the waist to the knee, right? They didn't see any feet. She didn't see any feet. And what was interesting about that to me, as I was preparing this live stream, was that could have that maybe been T's older member? You know, and because of the way that Jehovah, when Moses asked if he could touch him, no, see him, I think as Moses asked if he could see him, and Jehovah said no, because you will surely die if you see my face, indicating he has a face, by the way, and and so he turned, and he said, "You can touch me." And the way I understood it, it was like he was allowed to reach around a rock, and what he touched was like there's some translations where it's thigh, and there's some translations where it's hip. You know, I mean, I haven't studied it too in depth, except to know that by the translations of the Hebrew words in the Strong's Concordance and Hebrew and Greek dictionary. But that seemed to be like similar, you know, in a sense, to me. At least that occurred to me that way. Because actually, from our understanding, and I believe that this is an accurate understanding of reality, T is actually the soul that was doing the task of Jehovah. Now, it's I don't know if they ever said that, but it's because I think I could hear maybe though saying that he doesn't know which older member was doing that task. You know, so I don't know if he ever said that. I can't remember anything like that. But I just had that thought at the time that I shouldn't be calling T Jehovah except in the context that I'm doing it, which does come from the history and has all kinds of symbolism in the book of Revelation with the woman who's clothed with the sun and the moon is under her feet, and she's giving birth to this male son, and he's going to rule the human kingdom with the rule of iron. In other words, they can have very strict requirements to be a member of the next level. It's a training program. Now, the people that are, you know, can't conceive of that or don't choose to try to conceive of that or aren't inclined to, you know, care about that, some of them will claim that what I'm saying is heresy. And that's the way it works. It's because the way that Jesus talked about it, I still got to find the scripture, is that both the way that Jesus delivered it was the sheep and the goats return. So now that's talking about vehicular returning, right? So in other words, those individuals that were in that ancestry genetically during the time of Jesus that went against him, I mean, there's a way of looking at it that they became the current Christians. Whether that meant that they were, you know, in the government or in the Jewish religion at the time or outside of that, you know, or whatever, you know, into the paranormal and all the kinds of things that people were, all the different, you know, groups, and, you know, they would call them cults, is a common word, I think, used in a lot of that literature. But, right? No. Okay. Well, I think I've seen it, or anyway, but that doesn't matter. But um, so when T said that, when Doe asked or presented to her that if they were going to work together, then there could be no Brother Francis anymore, because T would say things like, "Brother Francis said this about something," and Doe felt like at a disadvantage because he didn't have a Brother Francis, and he was laughing about it. And the class was laughing about it because they understood what was going on there, I think. I feel like I do. It's when your older member is doing something, but you don't have somebody to tell you this is your older member, and so you're having to figure it out for yourself, even though you have the sense of it, like you got to do something with this person. In terms of Doe thinking towards T, that's what he said, that they didn't have anything in common. He said except for a love of their heavenly Father. And that served them both well, I believe. And they even designed it to be that way. Their souls on the spacecraft, before they actually came to take these vehicles, uh, uh, had that as a strategy of how they would awaken and when. But at the same time as it's happening, they're learning from that, and the people on the ground are the ones that have to adjust to all the changes that are potentially happening, because now they're occupying a vehicle from the next level that they were preparing all along from birth to have this role, as being a servant to being a piece of tin, being a piece of cloth to an older member from the next level to perform the task through. And Doe described vehicles as the way that we were being taught in the astronaut training program to think about it, is that the vehicles, any of the feelings that the vehicle has, it's not that you deny them. I mean, if you get hurt, you go to the doctor or whatever you have to do. But the way we were being given to get out of those vehicles and get above those vehicles was that recognizing the signals and then just dealing with the symptoms in ways that we learn to, and not take it to the degree of, well, I'm going to die, or I can't get up, I'm so depressed because I've got a headache, or, which, I mean, yeah, it depends on the severity, of course. And, but in general, vehicles they can elevate their tolerance for pain, especially when they have it all the time. And you just get used to it to a degree, and you try to work with it. Whether it's back pain or any other aches and pains. But the reason I'm bringing that up is just because T and O weren't. I mean, I hear these people yelling at me in my head almost everything I say about T and O and talk about these tapes. I hear somebody with a loud mouth screaming in my head, saying that the reason why people see it as brainwashing is because it was, and so I'm trying to address that influence, because I know that influence tells no truth about that, doesn't know what they're talking about, and instead and try to give the ammunition that I don't need to use actually myself, but because that's not a department that was troublesome for me. That wasn't one of the things that this vehicle was providing in lessons as much. And it may in the future, I don't know, but I mean, in terms of like doubting who T and Do are, and you know, uh, or seeing them in lower different lights that the media would have us look at them as Doe being taken over by T because those T said that he was Jesus coming back, and so but this shows that uh, Doe was very rebellious of being taken over by T. The tapes show that. Many tapes actually show that, and where he's talking about that. And so I mean, that leaves the ones that are in opposition to this information being from the true source that Tiendo said it was from. Uh, uh, some of them are going to continue, but some of them can wake up a little bit more. We all can wake up a little bit more. Nobody's void of that. So I'm not like getting up on my high haunches. Cause my haunches aren't that high. But because we compare ourselves to T and Do, and they've got very high standards, the rod of iron, and it shows in Revelation 11 that somebody is being given an order to measure the depth of the sea of the temple. And I believe that was talking about the western United States. And he said, don't measure the other part. That's the court. That's for the Gentiles. And that's another whole way of thinking that can easily be related to the way the garden appears to be growing. The way the garden does grow, I just, only know a limited amount about the details of how it grows. But how they grow the human kingdom. It's plant life to them, and plants that can potentially become vessels for members of the next level to use to advance themselves or be the teacher of others to help them become members of this evolutionary kingdom level above human, to work in laboratories and all different kinds of laboratories. Like there's a depiction of a weather lab over the earth, looking at a tornado, observing it. I don't know if they're creating it or just observing it, or if they have some guidance of it. No, it wasn't a tornado, it was a hurricane. And he showed the eye on it, and Alodi painted that. I was watching him paint a number of those paintings. Anyway, so that's what T and Do are coming to say. We've got laboratories. It's technical. It's not like sit around with and count rosary beads. I mean, there can be a value to everything, I guess. So I'm not putting anybody down by doing that if that works for them as a tool. But T and Do weren't going to have any of that because they were bringing the real deal, and that meant a new strategy, a new requirement, a new qualifications, new lesson plans that were also part of the lesson plans in the past. And so, souls were getting the opportunity to relive their previous lesson plans from, past lives of the soul with that vehicle. which doesn't happen to everybody. It doesn't really matter. Because it's what any of us do with what we got. And what we look to have more of is a big part of that. And I believe that the best place that you can find more in capital letters is to look at what Tiendo taught and said, and the audio tapes, over 1,000 audio tapes. That's the nitty gritty lessons that they were teaching every day, or not every day, because they didn't have meetings every day for the students, but it gets down to the nitty gritty. And, I never could have imagined what any of what was going to happen. To be honest with you, I don't know how I would have imagined any of that when I joined, but because there was always something unique about it. I mean, I'm talking about like with my genetic history and the ancestry and the experiences of the ancestors, and the current lifetime in the human vehicle with family and the world and everything that been interfacing with, that all of us are interfacing with, and then if you're, well, I mean, we can always be wrong about our opinions, of course, and so it's good to like always realize that and express it that way, and not worry about the thinking that I'm not wrong. So it can be a challenge. That can be another lesson for somebody that I didn't seem to have a problem with. Maybe in part because my vehicle is a little bit slow in some ways, and my mind is a little slow sometimes to get things. And then other times I think it's sharp enough to, well, do these streams a little bit, making some sense, right? But it's a roller coaster. Everything is there's all kinds of difficulties for everybody. If they don't think they're having any difficulties, well, they're not being honest, or they're not real about things that are difficult. And if they don't think they will, I think, because the next level is putting us all to the test. And they escalate very slowly the difficulty levels. We can see it happening especially since 2000, in the late 90s. There's all kinds of signs of it. I mean, there's all kinds of continuations of things that are pretty much the same in their overview, but when you get down to how they come about, and when and in what ways, and you can see that they're all, combined with all these justifications for wars and stuff. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about how Trump was a fascist, and he was going to, lead the world to destruction, and in so many words, and I don't know if he will or will not, but the bottom line is, if you want to look at fascist behavior, part of fascist behavior is taking over other countries. The United States was founded on taking over other people's land. And so that's just normal to do that for the inhabitants of the earth that may not yet have outgrown territorialism. Now, I'm not saying that I've outgrown territorialism. I think there's times I want to be safe in my little house like anybody else. And and I don't want a bunch of uh, people that are, used to criminal behavior. I mean, it's normal for them to, when I say criminal behavior is, stealing from people and, directly and even harming people, like snatching someone's purse or running away and, whatever that people are doing like that, whether, it's drug related or whatever. But, um, I don't think they should be treated badly, like the migrants that are, the migrants that are being rounded up. I hope they're not being treated badly in any way. Uh, I don't think the people that are doing that are. Well, I mean, I've met plenty of people in the military. Well, I mean, not that many, yeah, but uh, enough to know that they're regular people and they have, they don't want to cause anybody pain. Uh, I know it sounds stupid, right? They join the military to put up a defense, uh, and it ends up being an aggression for those that they can get to do that. And then when they push people into it, then you have a population that's full of people that are uh, beside themselves, with what they experienced in the war zones. It's like really degrading to the community, and it has all kinds of ramifications that become negative because of all the side effects of what those people in command are choosing. I mean, if you look at the Gulf of Tonkin incident for Vietnam to escalate it so they could drop more bombs on Cambodia and Laos, and they dropped more bombs. I've seen reports that they dropped more bombs during that time. They called it carpet bombing for a reason. And they dropped more bombs than they did in all of World War II, according to the information that I got from that. And I don't think it's far from the truth, but I don't know, maybe it is. But the bottom line is that it seems like most, or if not all, of the wars that I've grown up around in the United States, since have these stories of how the propaganda machine escalated to where they vilified the people that they wanted to go to war against. And, showing like a Nazi with his bayonet on a child up in the air, I think they were doing stuff like that. And I don't know if that was real. I doubt it. Because I think, in general, people are a little more civilized than that. I would hope so. But there's people domestically that they get drunk or stoned, or I don't think stoned necessarily that they get that way, but certainly people use alcohol in ways so that they don't have any inhibitions, and if they've got a lot of anger in them, they can easily start fights and get into altercations and get shot or stabbed or something. Anyway, way off the track of what I was trying to talk about here. So what Doe said about that time when Doe said that let's not, no Brother Francis anymore. He feels like, I think, I don't know if he indicated that he felt like T felt that way, but he was using the word we at the time. That it was forcing T to keep her mind in her vehicle, keep her next level mind in her vehicle at all times, instead of just when Brother Francis was around. And and so that was like T actually being here as completely as was planned to do this task, because T didn't need all her mind, according to Doe, to do this task. So she left part of her mind potentially doing another task, or who knows, observing this one. Making adjustments to
Her mind wasn't in her vehicle yet, was how I understood that.
before Brother Francis, before she stopped
But Brother Francis,
Gold Beach.
was her mind. That's how I understood that when we listened to it.
Did
I'm
you?
probably wrong, but that was
I don't doubt that.
T having to accept that was her
Accept responsibility
her
for
next
it.
level mind.
Right, right, that's
and
right.
Not and that forced
Right.
her mind permanently into her vehicle.
Right, that's right.
I think that's what.
I like the way you said that. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up to clarify it. Um, yeah, so that's all I was going to talk about in that regard from the tape. Well, the three mediums that you went to, I just wanted to clarify that this didn't continue. Like the trance was a one-time thing, and the going to mediums, never talked about going to mediums after that. And this was like 1973.
But he had done all that stuff before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which she did before
so.
meeting Doe. Yeah, that's right.
And possibly, I took that to mean that maybe she'd gone into trances before too. Before meeting Doe.
Oh yeah? Huh. Well, that makes some sense. I can see that could make sense. I just don't remember hearing it that way, but you might have been picking up on that. Okay, so I should be looking at this instead. Sorry. Trying to organize this better. Did I talk about the beginning of that tape enough? Because I didn't. There were any parts of it that I don't know if I really. I always get off the track and end up talking about things that aren't related to the subject. So I'm going to go on because I wanted to finish this talk about the rapture. It's warm in here.
Yeah, this base heater's right on this too.
It was from 1 Thessalonians 4:16 it starts, And I just wanted to go through a few keywords here to offer you maybe another way of thinking about these verses, strictly within the confines of the definitions of terms in the Greek and Hebrew dictionaries. But the word shout for Thessalonians 4:16. Well, what I wanted to preface this actually with was a recognition of the context. Now, this is coming from people know as Paul of Tarsus. And so you're not going to get, well, you can get a bunch of keywords because he probably had access. Hopefully, the disciples that were taking notes shared that with people. I don't know if they were very protective of it and they just shared it by talking about it or whatever, but those notes, became probably part of what is called the Q and other manuscripts that developed, but from the first writings. But so this would be like somebody having not having experience with somebody and trying to talk about them from what they had put together, their interpretation and translation of the things said by the people that did have a direct relationship, and any kind of notes that they were allowed to read about it, right? So you seem to get pretty good picture, except you can see parts of this in the things that Jesus said. So it's not like you can say that there's no value to it, but it also makes some assumptions that happens when people use it as the basis of their faith in what's going to happen to them in the future. To where they think that their vehicle is going to go up into the air. The Lord taking them in their vehicle. Now I know there are, I think, a significant amount of people that grow up thinking that and may not question it. Hopefully they did come to question it. And that's what helps people get away from the organized church and do their own pursuits of things. So that's where the positive comes from that. But so what is this word shout? Let's see if we can identify it with something that's happened or is still happening. An order. It's a command. See, that's interesting that they're saying it that way. It was only used one time, so it's I don't know why they have so many different definitions. Maybe from the Old Testament origin, because it says a stimulating cry, either that by which animals are roused and urged on by man, as horses by charioteers, okay, hounds by hunters, or that by which a signal is given to men, to rowers by the master, of a ship to soldiers, by a commander, with a loud summons, a trumpet call. Yeah, okay, so the Lord himself, okay? So he, in the context of Paul, he's talking about Jesus or Jehovah, I guess. I'm not sure exactly who, because it seems like Paul doesn't use the word Jesus that much. So the Lord himself. So there's a self qualification of this. Because there's different words that are used in different ways to depict the singular form of the first person. So for the Lord himself shall descend, so they didn't know when that's going to happen. And descend means, come down from, come down, to go down. So that can be literal. Come from outer space is certainly coming down. It comes down to heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel. Now that's a reference to the archangel that we find in Revelation 12, talking about that the archangel is the one that's in battling with his angels. In other words, his workers are working against Lucifer and his angels, his workers, fallen angel souls, or any souls that sided with them. And then it says, with the voice of the archangels. The voice, the word is phone, like telephone. And it actually is the idea of disclosure. This is a type of disclosure in the voice. So it's not about the sound like the pitch and stuff like that. It's what's being said. And it's of inanimate things as musical instruments. A sound or a tone. It can be a tone, what they're saying here. Be noised abroad. Yeah. A voice of the sound of uttered words is another way it's used. Speech is another way it's used. Of a language tongue. Well, we know since the book of Revelation was written with a lot of symbolism in it, you can understand that, or metaphors actually, is probably the better way of looking at it that you see in the dictionary, the Greek dictionary talked about that way. As metaphorically, it means this and it means that. And Kathy did an interesting experiment today where she was asking Google or AI or something
Meta.
on a Meta, right, to if the two witnesses could have been Jesus and,
God.
but she asked a series of questions and I was listening to them all, she was reading them back to me, the responses she was getting, and it seemed like AI was learning. We both felt like AI, by their responses, was learning because they would say things that didn't make any sense at all as answers to questions. I couldn't do it justice really by talking about it in any more detail.
I asked what the scriptures in the Bible or that discuss the two witnesses, and then it told me that. And then I asked, it gave, during that telling me what the scriptures were, it told me that the identity of the two could be various interpretations were that it could be Moses and Elijah, or Enoch and Elijah, or two unknown believers empowered by God. And then I asked it if Jesus could have been one of the two witnesses. And it said that was an interesting interpretation, but it's not widely accepted among biblical scholars, and here's why. The first answer is the two witnesses are described as prophesying for 1,260 days, being killed, and then resurrected. This scenario doesn't fit Jesus' earthly ministry or his resurrection.
Which didn't make any sense to me or Kathy, right?
It didn't seem to make much sense. I don't know, was Jesus...
Because
did
Jesus
he prophesy?
was all about his
But he
Yeah,
was,
Jesus gave prophecy.
but he was killed and he was resurrected. So that was weird to me. And then it said that Jesus was already established in the Bible as a central figure. So, you know, he'd already had a role. So he, couldn't be the two witnesses, one of them. And then that maybe the two witnesses were just a symbolic representation and not even an individual person.
Mm-hmm.
So then I asked it, could God be one of the two witnesses? And it was like, not really. Scholars say not really. And then the first answer was, God is often considered the one who speaks through prophets rather than being a prophet himself.
Right.
So we were like, huh?
So he speaks through the prophets, but he's not a prophet.
Like he's
How
prophecy.
could he speak through a prophet and
So
not be the same prophecy?
So that was interesting. And then it was like God is the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's unclear which of those ones from the Trinity would be one of the two witnesses. And then it didn't fit God's character or his actions in the biblical narrative of prophesying or being killed and resurrected, even though he did that as Jesus, supposedly. And then again, that it might be symbolic, the two witnesses. So then I said, but if God is within, then he would be one of the individuals who are the two witnesses. And it was like, oh, yeah, right.
Right.
And then it quoted some scripture saying, to support that God dwells within people. And so I said, so God is in one of the two witnesses, and God is also in Jesus. Therefore, the two witnesses could have been God and Jesus. Correct. And it said, yeah, actually, that does align with the biblical concept of the Trinity, where God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit
Your
are.
reasoning is sound.
Yeah, it gave
And
me
the
some little.
interpretation is plausible.
Right. Your insight highlights the deep connection between God, Jesus, and believers, demonstrating how God's presence can manifest through various witnesses, including Jesus. And I said, thank you.
That was an interesting experiment, I guess. I'm calling it that. But so back to my interpretation of this a little bit more.
Of God being the two witnesses, Jesus being the two
Oh no, I wasn't gonna go there yet.
Well, then why did you ask me to tell that story now?
Because I was just it just happened and it was real and it didn't have to fit.
Okay.
I don't think.
Okay.
So the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout and the voice of the archangel and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. So it's the archangel, since it's talked about in Revelation 12 as Michael, the connecting the dots, that would be Do. Because an archangel is the captain of angels. If you actually look it up. Oh, it doesn't say that here. Oh no. No, it says the chief of the angels. So, Doe did use the term that T was like an admiral and he was like a captain. Anyway. the voice of the archangel, and the trump of God. So those can be, those are continuation kind of things. This isn't like the one voice or the one trumpet sounding or the one shout. I mean, maybe the shout was just one big, blob of information, right? But however that happens, um, but that shout is coming with the disclosure from that captain of angel, that older member, in the more accurate ways of thinking about it. And so disclosure is the whole thing. When you want the truth to be out there about all things, then even though it can be detrimental in some people, and you can make a case for it being detrimental sometimes, uh, um, in terms of it's to me it's worth it to be continuing to still talk truth. Otherwise, it becomes a tangled web of lies that end up people getting all wrapped in and don't make any sense anymore. And so you have people growing up with years and years of not recognizing, well, for example, like I was saying before, the amount of wars that this country formed with, creating and stimulating. And growing their borders, and then doing it without actually expanding the borders by putting military bases in other countries. The turn of like over 300, I believe, that are being supported in order to what? Control those countries. Or see to it that their enemies don't get a hand in there. Have the influence and the protection. So, for better or worse, it's the normal state of affairs uh, for big governments to do. They have the justifications. But that doesn't mean it has to be done the same way, like history repeats itself. That means you gotta have this. I heard today on the news somebody threatened to shoot Trump. I don't know if he was in a high school or where, and he posted it on Facebook or something, and so people came down on him for threatening that, and he one of his responses was, well, I thought history was supposed to repeat itself, and there haven't been any assassinations for quite a while. Oh my gosh. Maybe he was being joking, I don't know. You never can tell what somebody is, where their heads are at. But the trump of God in this next part of that Thessalonians verse, the trumpet refers to a quavering or reverberation. In other words, that's something that's going to be going through the sound waves, of our lives, of our environment. That's when the next level information, their mind, the way they would do things more and more, and health consciousness and all kinds of thinking realistically about the next level, and and not getting distracted with thinking of ourselves as gods, and all these things that are easy to say, and you can make some sense out of them, but aren't true. They're not meaningful in the context of the use of that word, except the way that the lower forces have saw to it that word became more and more meaningless. And a lot of other words are in the same boat, I believe. But
Well, you didn't talk about what your thumbnail is.
oh, I didn't talk about that yet. Right. All right, I'll talk about the thumbnail. there's a when we got to Austin, Texas. Since I was in the group here in Austin, and we lived in several houses around the city at the time, and I one of my jobs here, I think I had 2 or 3 jobs in this area, was at what was called at the time the Bradford Hotel, and it was considered to be, I think, a 5-star hotel, and it was the way I remembered it was right across the street from the Driscoll Hotel. And my understanding at the time was that when the President of the United States would come to Austin, then their entourage would stay at the Driscoll Hotel. And I don't know, I'm just telling you about the view of it, and so I was so I got a job there as a dinner cook, and ended up making it into a job as a baker and a pastry maker. And meanwhile, 2 other members of the class were able to get jobs there. And one was Pam Odie, who was working in the prep area on the salads and all that kind of thing, and for buffets and everything, everything else for their white tablecloth menu. And June Odie was working as a helper to me, and mostly, yeah, so that we could, well, it was just nice to have a partner, and I was the primary on the task, and so Junodi didn't try to suggest doing anything different. I don't know if she got briefed by T and Do at all about it, but and so now years later, because that was like 1980s, Kathy and I drove by the building. It's got Littlefield, is it?
Yeah, the Littlefield building.
The Littlefield building, it's called, and it's what is the actual next level that it says on it? What is that says that?
It's a business in there. Next level security.
Right, there's a business inside that building that's called Next Level Security. And I thought that was interesting. Because T came up with the whole idea of a next level. So, I don't know, I'm not saying that somebody else didn't say it, that T heard it and thought, okay, to use. I'm not trying to say that, because I don't know. But she certainly made that a term that probably wouldn't have been gravitated to the way it has, if it hadn't come from the people that are beyond the condition of the human kingdom. But in terms of that scripture that says, talks about the dead in Christ, I already talked about that in the previous one. I'm just going to summarize it by saying I believe those are the individuals that were class members that left in between 1997 and 2000. So they rose first. And then I don't know, I got mixed up here, I think. Oh, come on, I want this to be the last one about this subject. Well, I'm just going to go to the scriptures itself. Then he says on Thessalonians 4:17, Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. I mean, he didn't talk about how you had to overcome the world first before you were going to be given this pie in the sky. Um, because he didn't need to know that at that time anyway, I don't think. Because just believing was probably a much bigger thing for them then as it would be for us now. You know, because we're not being persecuted for believing in Tiando. I mean, yeah, there's a certain amount of negativity that comes to us, but it's not like a persecution to where I'm afraid for my life or anything like that. And that might be in part because there has been an evolution of the mind, the civilization of the mind in general. Oh, I think there's lots of examples of that. Like when you're losing gender consciousness, then you're no longer looking at people like through a lens of some kind of gender definition. Then you're more like a member of the next level would look at other vehicles. Um, Not that they can't look at human vehicles and you know see them as a gender, but they wouldn't judge them. They wouldn't treat them any differently uh, because of that gender. Well, some ways they might, but they would be positive ways. You know, they wouldn't be like derogatory towards somebody else. And another way is with racial equality, so that nobody's being judged by the color of their skin. And ethnic equality, I think, is part of that too. You're not being judged by what the ancestors did, or you know what we were told the ancestors did. I think Martin Luther King said it really well by saying that judge people by the character of their mind, the character of their heart, maybe it was. I'm not sure if I remember it right. Okay, but so so the words in 4:17 of Thessalonians, First Thessalonians, say that those who are alive and remain shall be caught up. So there's the words that have been interpreted as rapture. And it's from the word harpazo, which means to seize or carry off by force. Claim for one's self eagerly, to snatch out of or away. So that's potentially still happening as we speak. As Doe talked about in the Beyond Human series, that there would be souls from the lower forces, the Luciferian souls, in league with that individual and others of that same nature or whatever they have become. And then there would be those that sided with the behaviors and ways of those space aliens, you know, and and humanness. And that's why you see some of the biggest churches, their whole thing that they're praising is the family. I know it's kind of hard to hear, but or think about, but to Jesus, the family wasn't mom and dad and brother and sister and children and that wasn't the family to Jesus. It's very clear that his family were those that believed the same things that he believed about his older member, about his connection. He was speaking to them because he knew who he was, who he is, enough to where he could convey those thoughts and then show us when he came back in the vehicle called Doe, by the way everything he does shows us how thoughtful he is and how direct he is, and how he's not working. He's working for us, but his task is really to his older member, and that's how you don't get interested in your students in any kind of way. I'm not saying you're like as if I'm talking about me as a teacher or something, because I'm not a teacher. I have some things to teach because I got things from T and Do, the teachers. But that's the same with anybody right now, because we have a big benefit. We have actually their words on video camera and also on audio tapes and in writing form. So we know what they were teaching. We can know it. But it's hard to handle, and it's hard to know how to talk about that to people. I know I don't talk about it that often. Very infrequent, actually, do I say much about it. To me, if I get somebody that sees my shirt that has a picture of T and Do on it, and they say they like it, or they might even say something about, I believe in them or something. I think that's happened to us once. I think to Kathy it happened once. Something about that, right?
With the older member shirt.
Oh, the older member shirt that shows the picture of what an older member from the kingdom of heaven might look like. And they have a bigger head, and they are in a off-color vehicle, like a grayish, right? Is it, or is it white?
I think it looks more. I don't know.
But all the colors are, next level members can have all different colors on their vehicles. But there's reasons why they chose to take vehicles that they took. Because those vehicles are prepared to, like the vehicles that Doe took, according to T, would provide the lesson steps that he had to actually overcome with his vehicle. That experience then could be passed on to students. And you hear Doe all the time talking about how to stop things in their tracks. And how to, it's easy to say. It's like when you're in church, it's easy to, have your heart out there if you're someone that still goes to church. And, I mean, I'm not saying putting you down if you still go to church. If you get something out of it, then go to church. That's the bottom line of it. It's a positive for you. Because sometimes that's the only place you can go to where you can feel the reverence of the next level being talked about. So there's a positive in that. But it also can be a trap in thinking that that language and that terminology and those thoughts associated with the people that are clinging to the religion a little bit too much maybe, because if they hear something that has the least bit of insinuation of being different than something they read in the scripture by their interpretation, then they think that you're from the devil and all that baloney that gives the people in the religions a bad name among the people that don't have that background, and those would be the Gentiles. And so then the Gentiles end up a lot of times, it seems like, get rid of that material and cast those people off as like one group of incohesiveness or false teachings or a bunch of baloney. bunch of made up stuff from a bunch of mythology, a bunch of stories made up to control people. And 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 then there's truth to that happening, and so they have their ammunition in that regard. And yet, uh, if they don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, then someday they'll potentially be open to seeing what that was and what it is now through the teachings of T and Do. Well, the only ones that I've ever heard of that were talking about all the things that they were talking about, all in one package, and with new understandings built into it, new ways of looking at the terminology. That, like in a lot of the scripture, they give you two examples of things of the same little point. Sometimes more than that, because they know how hard it is to comprehend a lot of stuff. So I better go to the chat room. I've been neglectful. Oh, didn't mean that to be off. Okay. And someone named Lucifer Lucero says, Rapture, exclamation. Right. So PSA says, if you have been given undeniable proof that your beliefs were mistaken before the group's final decision, do you think you would have accepted it? Or was the sense of purpose and belonging too strong? Well, in a sense, that happened to me. I mean, not undeniable proof, but it became something that I was not getting in the classroom, that I needed to learn. And it doesn't mean that I had to leave to learn it, because, but I didn't have the sense at the time to want to stay to learn it. But right from the beginning, I felt like, this was giving your all. That made sense to me because of previous relationship that the soul returning in this vehicle to take over this vehicle had. And Doe talked about that in some of the audio tapes, that he felt like all of those members had had a previous experience with the information, with the older member's mind on the planet. But he wasn't into trying to figure out who was who, even though he gave us some clues about that. But that's, that nobody would want to be somebody in the past if they really knew that now was the time to seize the moment. So it didn't matter if you were someone that was looked up to by the religious literature in the past, because you would see yourself as an elementary understanding at that point. And so it wouldn't be elevated at all to want to rest on those alleged laurels. So, now I know I probably didn't answer your question directly, but because I wasn't given evidence that my beliefs were mistaken. In fact, the opposite. I mean, no, not the opposite. I never questioned the beliefs. I knew what they believed, and I believed what they believed. I mean, I trusted what they believed, which actually Christians would benefit if they would read the passages where they talk about believing and you shall be saved, if they recognize that trusting in their mind, and trusting in their mind means not only saying that's the truth to people, telling people about it, and saying, this is the truth, this is, I trust that came from God, but it's actually um, uh, showing their, talking openly about all the behaviors and ways that, and why it was required of them to give their all. And so I didn't have that experience of being mistaken. And hypotheticals don't really work very well with me. I can't, imagine what it would be different if it was different. If somehow I got undeniable proof, I don't know what that would be, what that would look like. You know, because even being mistaken, mistaken about what exactly? Because there's like, a whole bunch of ideas that came from T and Do that made sense to me. I mean, just seemed to be telling me something that I didn't know already. And were challenging to understand more about their thinking. I mean, even just saying that it's a physical kingdom was going against the grain of spirituality and religiosity and paranormality, as part of that. I don't know if that's a word, but uh, so so it's hard to know what you're mistaken about. And what I found over the years, looking back on the time I spent and listening to the tapes again, and for the first time and many times, because I didn't necessarily listen to them after the meetings were made. Sometimes I did, but not a lot. But I see how many things I didn't get much of, and that there were layers of understanding with things. It's like somebody could say, "Well, I'm a car mechanic." They might even think that they're a master car mechanic. But is it of Porsches? Or is it of all these different other kinds of cars? Can you fix any car or anything with an engine on it? Rocket engines. It's a whole different technology sometimes, a lot with that. So people should be very humble, in my opinion, of telling other people where they might be mistaken. I know that's not necessarily a connection that I was trying to make there, but uh, um, a sense of purpose. See, I didn't join to have a sense of purpose. I was content with what I was doing. I mean, there's a certain part of me that wasn't content. Okay, but I was enjoying playing with a band and making money from odd jobs, and just get by. I wasn't trying to get an education in order to build a career, and to me it was just sure there were challenges, but I would visit. I was interested in the meditation, but I didn't really vibrate with it. It didn't make sense to me. I mean, I just didn't work for me because I didn't know what to meditate on that felt right to meditate on. Some picture of an Indian guru uh, didn't mean anything to me. I mean, maybe if I studied his words, maybe if I would have identified with them, maybe then it would have meant more to me. But I didn't really want to study their words much. I read some books and stuff, but and I went to different talks, not too often, but anyway. So I didn't join to have a purpose, not at all. Uh, you know, At the time, I was building a little teepee house out of logs, and I was working a garden. That was all. That felt like it was productive. So that's that part. And then belonging too strong, sense of purpose and belonging. Too strong. No, I didn't. I had the opportunity to belong to a number of different groups. Hare Krishnas were coming through all the time, and the Sikhs, not the Sikhs, oh, I forgot now the name of the group that would do
Hare
this dancing.
Krishnas?
The Hare
Sufis.
Krishnas, what was it?
Sufis.
The Sufis, right, would come around. We'd go to the field, and they'd be having big circle of dancing together, with somebody playing a drum in the middle and stuff. I'd be more interested in playing the drum, but I didn't do it then. Well, I did play drums at the time, but wasn't part of that group. But anyway, so I did experiment with all kinds of things, but I never joined something to be a part of, to feel like I was belonging to something. I didn't need to belong to something. I actually had a rebellion from belonging to something, I think. It's like, I don't, I had Christians trying to convert me on the street. I spent a lot of time on the street. I was homeless because I was living out of my sleeping bag and hitchhiking places. But I wasn't doing that for more than like months at a time, or probably even weeks at a time, but maybe more than that. Sometimes I would have a place to lay my head inside someone's house for a few days or a week or something like that. I can't, I know this. This is the kind of things that happen with when the media starts to report on the parts of the story that they think are most alike what their readership can identify with. And when they put their spin on it as well, because they do that all the time. They put certain things together in a format that's actually creating a point of view. That's even judgmental of it. And that's been done a lot to the Heaven's Gate story. And I don't know if it's continuing to happen because I haven't seen many stories recently. It's like it just, stopped almost. When I was following every year for the anniversary, there was always a couple stories. Now there's a bare mention of them. Because I think their mind is withdrawing from the civilization more and more. So, but we can pull it back if we go into their material and learn what they were teaching and have that curiosity, and the next level will help us do it if we want to. And it'll be a natural progression. And you'll still have, freedom to think in all the ways that the lower forces want us to think about the reality of the next level. They want it to be a spiritual kingdom, They want it to be like when you die, you're actually better off. You're free for the first time, and you're going to be able to float around the universe. Or you're going to be, not taking a new vehicle, or going to a vehicle that's, meditating all the time on peace in the world and things like that. Or to become, whatever in the world. Put all your efforts into some pursuit of, fame and fortune, or invention, or whatever it is. And those are all parts of the human kingdom. To get into it, and if those individuals choose to be in the school, then they're gonna start to not really be attracted to those things that are depicted in high society as being the ultimate human. Anyway, so I'll move on in the chat. To let go, says PSA.
That was the rest of the question.
Oh yeah, that was the rest of that question. Okay, too strong to let go. Right. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of pull to let go in me. Not at all. In fact, it was almost like an afterthought that would happen sometimes. Like sometimes I was driving around in a really nice car, like a Cadillac or a big, crew cab truck, big, that was brand new, and I could feel my vehicle feeling like other people were seeing me as better than I was. I mean, not better than I was, but as special because I appeared to have wealth. By driving. At the time, Cadillac was considered to be a wealthy car to drive, and there were others too, but especially in Dallas, that's where that was happening to me the most. And so I was sent. I was like sometimes the person that was uh, the carpool driver. In other words, I would end up at my job in the world last, and then sometimes I would pick up other people on the way home. But we had a whole dispatch group that was monitoring all that, so everybody could get picked up when they needed to be picked up from the dozen people or so that were working at any given time. Uh, and so sometimes I was in the car by myself, and maybe 2 times it happened. I had this thought of, I can just drive away. Then I thought to myself, also, I remember actually having the thought, why would I want to? Why would I want to drive away? I mean, after all, even for the vehicle, this was a nice lifestyle. I didn't even know what I didn't have to worry about because I didn't live, like a working class or a, a lifestyle to where, to have food and to have clothing and shelter and gasoline. You had to work, a job that you didn't necessarily like to do. Or you might like to do it, but you don't want to have to do it as much as you have to do it. But so to me it was, but I didn't have any other reason to leave. And then I remember one time having a thought, because Tiendo would stimulate us to actually take the time to think about whether we wanted to leave, if there was something in the world that we missed. And they said they went through the same thing. They would make themselves think about whether there was something in the world that they wanted. Whether it's a relationship or whether it's a career pursuit or to have children or, because that's what occurred to me one time. I had a thought of maybe I'd want to I think I had the thought that, well, I don't know if I had it or somebody else told me that they saw a little girl with me. I was in my 40s already. And this is after I left the group. And so I ended up having a daughter. Anyway, so it's this kind of honesty that I'm expressing, even though I know individuals have to kind of take it with a grain of salt a lot of times and consider the person that's saying it, that I don't have any credentials and I'm not that well spoken. But, so I can't appear to be knowledgeable about this because also I believe in it. And so automatically some people see me as, well, I can't really take anything to heart what he says because look at what he believes in. So I could give them the cure for cancer if I knew it, and I think I might, but and they would they would Well, this is common sense. This is common sense, actually. And I'll give you another example.
What's the cure for cancer?
No, well, I think the transfiguration diet can be a cure for cancer.
Okay. You can't just say, I think I might know the cure for cancer and then not say what it is.
No, I was just using that as an example of uh, I could have some beneficial information that everybody would want if they thought it was true. Because it would cure something that's a bad disease, and yet if a doctor said it, then we automatically have the credentials of that person's degree and experience to give us the confidence of trusting them. Hopefully, but and I feel the same way, in some ways. But I know there's intelligence way beyond academia. That there's a certain amount of intelligence in academia, but there's a certain amount of lack of intelligence in academia. But that doesn't mean that somebody who's interested in academia isn't also interested in the intelligence that I'm talking about. But anyway, I'm going to move on from that to say that, oh, Joseph Coates says, "Hey Sawyer, good to hear you tonight. It's actually my birthday. I always like to hear from you in general." Well, happy birthday to you. And Rise Above says, "Sawyer, is it wrong to wish for or to want to have experienced the classroom?" No, I don't think so at all. I don't think that would be wrong. I think that would be, I mean, I think that would be part of what's going to help you bloom, help you become part of the current classroom, even though the teachers aren't in that classroom with us physically. Their information is here, and they told us everything we need to know about how to think about it and what our tasks can be. And everything is up for grabs in terms of what somebody is willing to give. But their position was against suicide, so we shouldn't get that mixed up with thinking of ourselves as not human. Because we have human vehicles. I mean, because if we need a soul to grow our vehicles, and we need a vehicle, not to grow our vehicles, we need a soul to grow our next level mind through, to possess.
You need a vehicle?
And you need the vehicle in order to have experience so that the soul has things to overcome by using next level teachings to overcome those things. That's why it's so good to listen to the tapes, because you can watch the process of Tiendo taking a class through the overcoming process. It's not easy. It's difficult. And that's why so many people dropped out and were sometimes given the opportunity to drop back in. Rise Above says after that question, "I understand there is no classroom without dough, but is it wrong to be disappointed about that?" Well, I don't think it would be positive to dwell on it, right? To be depressed about it, or not get out of bed because you're so upset about it. There's plenty to do to actually show how much you wish you could be part of that same kind of classroom. And you will. I don't doubt it at all. If you continue on that direction, and you start asking them for service and asking them to help you with as much as you want to ask help with, whatever that is. Uh, like Kathy started writing down this. Came up with some times she wanted to get a notification from my phone to think about what Doe might be thinking about. And when she said that, I said that sounds like what they introduced as checking, which we did it every 12 minutes, wanting to be of service. Because and Kathy said then, I'm not going to do it every 12 minutes. And I said, of course not. I mean, I'm not saying of course not really, but I'm saying that it's up to us how much we want to check. But the check is like with making decisions can all be part of a checking with them. Trying to come up with a solution. You can think about this, talk about that, think about this, talk about that, and maybe you'll get a solution really quick. And then or maybe you'll have to linger on it for days or weeks or months but if it's a really meaningful solution then or situation that causes you some anxiety and things like that, that's what it takes for me sometimes to then say to T and O, how would you have me do this? It's but if you can arrive at that question much earlier in that by actually being open to what they might say, which might not be what your vehicle wants.
You finally bought the right kind of yogurt.
Oh, good. I know, it's Greek. I read the label 3 times this time. Oh, look at that. All right.
Yeah,
that's the HEB brand.
The other.
I'm going to have some of that too, I think.
Chobani would have been like that too, but you finally got the right kind. But, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I'm finished with the chat at this point. I'm just going to put a period on that part of not Revelation, 1 Thessalonians that says, they which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall ever be with the Lord. Shall is a big word there. They got to stay on track. And that's not easy. It's not meant to be easy. And to be caught up together with them in the clouds means actually their souls going onto a spacecraft that humans can't see. It's covered up. It's not, and spirit, the word clouds were used many times in the Old Testament for the next level to use to cover themselves up, so that for whatever reasons, they might have reasons. It might have been too much to look at them even in their spacecrafts. I don't know, but they know how to run the planet, so they take things into consideration, because these human brains are capable of getting fried. If you've ever thought about something that the first thought you had was that's insane, and then you were shown that maybe it's not so insane, and you had that thought, then next thought you might have is, well, even if it's not insane, I don't want to it's not interesting to me. So as far as I'm concerned, it's still insane. I don't know what thoughts you would have. And I'm not saying I would have those. I was just guessing at what some people might have. But, there's always an argument to be had from the discarnate world, from the space alien souls, from the thoughts that are just around us all the time, that are some stronger than others, that we can pick up on in the ether. It's a challenging environment, to say the least. And it's designed to be that way. So the students had to convince Doe from tape 250 that he asked for them to prove to him that they were going to accelerate their growth by making changes. It's hard to hear it. It was hard to hear it at the time. I know I came away from the meetings thinking, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, and I'd be like repeating as a slogan in my mind, what I was going to focus on, from the keywords. But then after doing that and going to bed and then waking up the next day, if there weren't any methods to keep my mind in that direction, then it would kind of start to dissipate. And we would get into a condition that I was talking about on this tape 250 of being comfortable with our growth, so that it was going to take another 12 years to conquer this and conquer that. And if you want to see the things that needed to be conquered, then go to the Heaven's Gate book and read 2 documents on the heavensgate.com website that are called major offenses and lesser offenses, right? Yeah. And then there's also another document called the 17 Steps that gives a lot of clues on what that astronaut training program entailed. Which included the offenses. So that was the bar being put on the entire human kingdom of saying, this is what it will take to accomplish enough of while in a human vehicle to be graduated into next level membership. With which meant getting a next level vehicle grown for that student's ability that they had grown to by building their minds, by working against the mammalian nature and the seed-bearing environment to become an individual for the first time because of all the influences on us while we're in the human vehicle that they don't have in the next level. They don't have like discarnates there. They don't have anybody trying to get you to do something or getting you to think a certain way or take a certain action. Those forces are strong. And I think they get stronger and stronger, but we can deal with them better and better, faster and faster, the more we have that intent. And again, asking T and Do for help is always when we can, but when you're in the middle of something happening to you in your mind, it's like you don't even have the presence, the consciousness of thinking, I got to ask for help for this. Part of us, I think, thinks that I can fix this and might even think that that's a better place to be. I can do it myself. I can get out of this. But, and they might be able to. But I don't think it's ever a bad, even if it's just an exercise, that of course can become like a vain repetition, like Jesus talked about not doing. And yet, you see the Catholics all like with their song, their vain repetitions. Vain, I think the word means it becomes worthless. It becomes void of importance in our minds because we just say the same thing over and over again, and we no longer know what the application of that word can mean. We might, but that would be a much stronger soul, I guess, using those prayers and actually continuing the kind of urgency or the elevation, the relevance reverence, yeah. That where those prayers came from, still have in them, I think. All right, so I guess that's about all I need to talk about now. So I'll go back to the chat for a second, and then I'll be calling it a night. So it's good to get a couple of questions. Appreciate it. Seeing you all here. Rise Above, Joseph Coates, PSA, Lucero, Rise Above, The Finch Show. Oh, School Dave right at the top. For some reason I wasn't scrolling up all the way. I don't know why it does that sometimes. All right, so have a great night, says Old School Dave. Thank you both. You're welcome. You too. Oh, there's another question. Joseph Coates says, is there anything about Lagodi you can say that hasn't been mentioned before? Well, I would say a strong mind. I don't know if people have talked about that. A very strong mind. And you know that it's a strong mind when you can accept correction from your older member, even if it feels like it hurts. Because your older member doesn't ever want to hurt you, but knows that some of the correction can, if somebody chooses to let it hurt them, and even let it hurt them, I mean, it isn't a bad thing. If you feel the hurt, you feel the hurt. But to not linger in that hurt and to reach for what the older member was offering in a change of behavior or terminology or whatever it was. Because Lagodi had, you'll see in the tapes if you listen to him, maybe even in tape 250.
No, it's not in tape 250.
No, maybe 49 or right before that.
It's one of those right before, but it's not 250.
Yeah, one before it. But
I could be wrong about that. But
well, I think you might be right. Yeah. Either way, so if you want to listen to it, start with the late 40s, I guess, and you'll hear
240s.
240s. Right. Sorry. Thanks for that. And you'll hear Lagodi and Doe talking about Lagodi and how sometimes Lagodi would actually tell Doe that he doesn't know why he can't get anything right.
No, it's
No?
it's from tape 30 and 31.
Oh.
The one that we were
Okay.
listening with T. Because remember he said the many programs, the thousands of procedures or something.
Oh, yeah. I think that was another case, though, from what I'm talking about. Because I think Doe was referring to that
I recall.
recently. Yeah, so go back to tape 30 or 31
that was 30.
to hear more about T and Doe and Lagodi being involved. He speaks up in a lot of tapes, so you can learn quite a few things. Unfortunately, we don't have access to transcriptions that would show their names and everything if a transcription was done by somebody, in order to search them to find those spots. I mean, it might be nice to do that. I mean, T and O talked about cataloging them.
Well, you guys were working on transcripts yourselves, right?
Yeah, we were. We were doing transcripts in the classroom. We don't know what happened to them, those transcripts. If Doe ended up discarding them or sending them to somebody, or...
Seems like Mark and Sarah probably have them with all the stuff they received from storage.
Yeah, we imagine it was in probably the storage. So Mark and Sarah probably have them. And hopefully maybe we'll get to have them, access to them. Not to possess them, but for public possession. So that their information can live for as long as this civilization is going.
Well, and sometimes it'd be nice to put the captions with the tapes.
Yeah.
to have, a central location where the audio is with a transcript running along.
Yeah, sure.
Because some people, watch videos with the sound off
Yeah,
and just read the words,
right,
captions.
right. And that's for the hard of hearing too. They get it. They could be able to see the information.
But I mean, like when you're asleep and I can't go to sleep, and
yeah,
I watch videos.
right.
Like
You keep it low enough to where
I don't
it
put the
doesn't
sound
generally
on at
bother
all,
me.
because I don't put the sound on.
Oh, you don't put the sound on. I have heard when you did. Sometimes I can't help but try to listen to it.
Well, usually that's only when I'm listening to Beyond Human
Yeah,
or tape.
yeah, but I still like it. I still like it to hear Doug's voice.
Excuse
Bless you. So Joseph Coates says thanks for the answer. You're welcome. All right, folks. Good night.